world team champions together. Ronan, a two-time world champion. He has achieved both of those titles in the last 3 years. When he admitted himself, it seemed like that opportunity had faded away. It was a fantastic opening break by their opponents, led off by Vic Makh on the break, but he really hasn't been too well rewarded. It's Declan Brennan first up. First frame, as always, Scotch doubles, which means alternate shots. Second and third frames are singles. And we go to the fourth frame, which is another Scotch. And then 5 and 6 singles, and seventh, if required, the deciding frame will be played on Scotch doubles. It's a lovely little opening shot from Declan Brennan there, who had to swerve that one in. You can see just behind Ronan's head, John Maher and Teejay Bateman in the house, already scouting their future opponents tonight. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the pattern side, just how nice is it to see Ronan McCarthy back around an ultimate pool table?
It really is. Said hello to him as soon as he got to the venue, and you realise that really is such a good guy at the venues and always makes people laugh, and forget the fact he's actually an unbelievable player as well. Yeah, it's brilliant to see him back. Made the right decision for him, which is obviously disappointing for the rest of us because we don't get to see him play as much, but I suspect he's still going to play brilliantly.
He has sort of earned that right though, hasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially as a Northern Irishman, when the majority of the pool that's played in this version of the game is in England, and he's had to do a lot of travelling over the years, constantly all over the place. Does it with a smile, never moans about it at all.
I've said this story before, but when I very first started watching this game all those years ago in a quite dark and bleak hotel in Bradford, I think it was, Simon, you were my 𝗟𝗩𝗘 when it came to English 8-ball, and one of the ways in which you started to educate me on this great game was to tell me and go and watch Ronan McCarthy play, because if you watch Ronan, you understand the game.
Yeah, his cue ball and his pattern play is incredible. It's what separated him, really. His economy of movement with that cue ball, trying to keep the game simple, not doing too much, just connect them together. And he's so good at it. And I think Declan probably does it. He's learned, coming from a snooker world, he's learned from Ronan, but I think he's probably expanded on it a little bit. Declan will leave more angles and use cushions more, but what a great person to learn the game from, really.
I think Ronan's a great example of making the absolute maximum out of what he's been given, as we see him on this opening 8-ball, and that is a very tidy opening Scotch clearance from the two Northern Irishmen, as if they've never been away. But I think it'd be fair to say, in comparison to a lot of very, very top players, Ronan's never been like the most gifted cueist. He's never had the biggest break. It's almost in spite of that he's been successful, and that's because his superpower is in and amongst the balls. His mind is streets ahead of a lot of players. Yeah,
the one big issue for Ronan has always been his break has never been the same level as a lot of the other top players, but to consider what he's achieved and what he's won in the game with that, I've talked a lot about his percentage of break clearances from making a ball on the break is exceptionally high. He just doesn't make a ball as many times as other people.
Speaking of breaks, goodness me, Declan Brennan has absolutely larruped those, and he's had to remind Ronan McCarthy to take a seat as it's his singles frame. Back down in your chair, Ronan, says Declan, who is a little bit miffed to see Ronan coming up to take the next shot.
Of course, Ronan's more than entitled to come up and actually talk him through a finish if he wants to, but I'm not sure he's going to need to do that. You're talking about one of the best players in the game. He'll go his own way here. First shot dealt with the only real problem ball.
Only down. Suggest the 8-ball's a problem ball?
But it's gone a bit awkward, but it was obviously tied up previously. The only problem he's got now is that the red is kind of in the way when he plays this yellow down the table. If he flicks it, he might end up awkward on the next ball. He's going to try and screw out because of it.
Yeah, a little side on there as well to bring the cue ball out for Declan Brennan. It's a pretty well executed shot.
Yeah, in those situations, you'd love to have used the bottom cushion, but that red was in the way. So he's not perfect yet. That'll do, though. Is he straight enough to hold? The yellow at the top of the table does go top right. I'm not sure it goes top left. It might do. Don't think he can hold when he takes the one top left. So a little bit of work left in this finish. And, of course, getting good on that 8-ball's the key.
One thing you've often pointed out on commentary duty, Si, is the way that Declan sees the game. His patterns are a little bit unique, really. I always think of Ronan as someone who almost picks apart a finish with very, very little movement of the cue ball, that economy that you talked about. Whereas Declan seems to love using cushions more than most.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to do some training videos with Declan and a lot of the top players as well. And I love the way that Declan sees the game, because he's often talking about, you know, where straight in might be good if you land straight in. If you finish just off straight in, and it could become awkward, where he'd always like to leave that cushions. I think he's probably, this is another prime example, he'd like to use the cushions here rather than having to play it straight, because if you're using cushions you can then manipulate the cue ball and you can access so many more parts of the table.
Testing 8-ball though for a 2-0 lead. This is what he settled for right at the start of the frame. It was a tester, and even someone who is as gifted a potter as Declan Brennan comes up short.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this. Such a good 𝗡𝗃𝗃, but you can see there went straight into the cushion. That was never going to drop.
What a chance this is for Vic Makh. He mentioned about how this frame was a little bit of a freebie for Vic if the Makhs had won frame 1, but this still feels like an absolute freebie.
Yeah, if you offered the Makhs 1-1 after 2 frames, and then you've got Vivek coming up and he plays the next 2 singles frames with a Scotch frame in between, so essentially 3 straight frames, you'd take that if you're in the Makhs position. So this obviously now needs to go for Vic, but it puts him in a really good position.
I just wonder, does he need to slightly develop the red here, or can he leave it alone?
I think he's okay with it.
Yeah,
just come into the bottom half of the table, you'll be fine. I don't think it's that. If it's touching the jaw, maybe it's a problem, but you would have done something about it. So.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. Yeah, he's okay. He wants that to keep travelling though, that's okay. Yeah, tidy little finish this from Vic so far.
Would have loved another foot on that though. Just,
yeah.
It's almost just become missable now because it's a thin clip. I mean, it shouldn't be. Yeah, nicely done.
Yeah, and obviously the 8-ball is completely unmissable. Good start for Vic, especially as we spoke about earlier, considering he's only fresh out of bed, really. Been really unwell over the last week or so. And I must say, looks remarkably well considering.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't feel it, but...
When I chatted to him when he arrived at the venue, I wasn't aware of anything. He just was in great form, great spirits. And he is a very, very good player. You know, I'm talking about, you know, trying to get the partnership set up as we have another look at that mistake from Declan. But easy to forget that Vic in his own right is an exceptional player. He's a seasoned international player for India, and I'm only talking in terms of current professionals. That Vivek is, you know, now it's on his shoulders, which is what the partnership would want.
Yeah, absolutely. Vic is sort of, for me, sort of the definition of your steady pro. Like, he's just really consistent, really reliable. That's why he's such a good international player and has been relied upon for the Indian team for a long time, and a very, very good Indian senior team now for a good few years as well, who've been all conquering. But it's a dry break from Vivek. The Makhs will need to sort that out when it comes to their breaks tonight. But first look at Ronan McCarthy playing singles. Declan Brennan's missed a trick here by not getting up to try and play with him, in my opinion, for the comedy, but we'll let him off.
First glance, this layout, you're looking at it going, well, you've got to be yellows because the red at the top right's a major problem, but Ronan, I think, will get underneath. He might play it now, or he might wait a visit and deal with the one at the top when it's right, because you can play the red that the cue ball's nearest to now off the yellow, open it up, and then red's become really comfortable. he's straight in on it, or not far off straight in on it. This is fine.
Truly was remarkable. Watching back, actually, he's gone. Yeah, nicely played. We're watching back the other day the highlights of his World Championship win last year, and when Ronan won his first world title a few years ago now in Ireland, that really felt like, you know, and he won the Players' Championship with Ultimate Pool about a month later. It really felt like he'd peaked, and sort of what happened afterwards in the next season sort of fell down a little bit, and you just thought, well, so pleased he finally got that swan song. The world title win really did come out of nowhere, and yet, despite the fact that it came out of nowhere, it's the greatest world final of all time. You know, he and Carl Sutton played a joke of a level for about 3 hours. The level he's still capable of playing is absolutely A1. And he has been faultless tonight so far.
Yeah, you referenced that world final, and obviously it's very, very tough on Carl Sutton because he played a flawless match. He didn't make a mistake in the match and wasn't able to turn a dominant position at the interval into victory. But it highlights one of Ronan's greatest assets, which has always been his temperament. Obviously an unbelievable player, but a lot of players at the interval could have been forgiven for not seeing a way back into the match because they're playing against an opponent that's playing unbelievable. And yet Ronan just kept going about his business, and turned it around. And mentally, he's so strong.
He's an excellent poker player, and that won't surprise anybody. Doesn't give anything away. And his temperament out there in whatever he's playing is ice cold, but also laced with an incredible competitive spirit in whatever he's playing. That is a savagely unlucky in off the break for Declan Brennan. He's hit 2 breaks tonight, and he's absolutely sledged the pair of them. That is one to watch.
Yeah, this has left a routine out, though, for the Makhs. They really should get this to tie the scores up with, what, 5 minutes just over to play. And then it would be Vivek to break if they can make these. There's no obstacles in the way. I guess the only mistake here is they've come too far down the table. If they're just above straight, they'd just be floating it in, and connections are really simple. Shouldn't have any issues, though. Could argue that the ball they've just played probably should have been their ball for the 8 ball. Maybe they would have left the one on the other side, but now they're about as far out of position as they would hope, to be, really.
Yeah.
They've actually got to work, but it's still so wide open.
He's had to keep tracking. He's played a good shot there, Vivek. Judged that really well, actually.
I'm not sure if you can get above the straight here on the yellow to the centre. You can't. Straight here. Those 2 reds playing quite big. Can you just make sure he doesn't go behind them?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like he actually had. Yeah, just used the pocket. He was just far enough up the table, so it was a good shot from Vic to get Vivek far enough up.
Yeah, I think they played a bad shot towards the start of that visit, which just made it a little bit hairy. But the layout of the table was quite kind. It enabled them the room to recover, and actually the final few shots they played were perfect.
If they'd landed half a ball above straight on that first one, on the first positional shot to left centre, they could have played every other shot without actually having to get down on it, because it would just be rolling the ball in 6 times. That's how good that layout was.
Over the line they go. 2-2. With, well, are we going to hear the 15-second shot clock sound before we break off? No, I don't think we are. No, not too far away from it, though. Will happen in this frame. A crucial transition between 30-second shot clock and 15. It's Vivek Makh against Declan Brennan. Crucial frame. Cut break for Vivek. it's a fantastic break.
Oh, this layout again. What a layout.
I mean, you can't really cut break too much better than this, can you?
No,
This is extraordinary. Look at the power he gets through this.
It's brilliant. Again, it's one positional shot to start the frame, and you're out. I mean, it really is. You could go yellows if you really wanted to, but reds are just sat there waiting and begging to be cleared up.
Yeah, the only reason you'd sort of be reticent for yellows is the one that's on the right side rail. But you know, if you wanted to show off and take yellows, it wouldn't be exactly a bad set.
It's the only shot that can go wrong for me. That red there. Okay, decided not to try and do too much. So just playing the next one from slight distance, but it's just a drop-in shot. It's just perfect here. Do you want to stay above the red or below the red? You've got options, but it's just a straight pot. It stays above it, and it's perfect. That wasn't the best of shots. Had to avoid that. So swing it 2 cushions or less likely, but you could have maybe checked it up to come on the inside of that. Still should get out, but didn't really want to cannon that ball.
Yeah, just going to play a shot now. Ooh, it's unraveling a little bit. Needed to avoid the last 2 cannons that he's had. It's gone from being unmissable to very, very tricky.
This is okay. He's on this to top right. It still goes through the gap. He's very fortunate for this to be still on.
Cool, isn't he just? It's a lovely pot too from Vivek Makh. But from where he was, to have this as your final red for the 8 ball is not ideal. But ultimately, on a 15-second shot clock, it's just about getting out. And that was a brilliant bit of cueing. Little bit of rub here for Vivek Makh. But you have to say, from the point where he got that little bit of run, he did take out those last 3 shots very, very well. Just wants to sort of wind that cue ball in a little bit.
Yeah, I think a fresh Vivek Makh there, really. Last season, where every time we saw him play, he just looked like the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and he was getting annoyed with everything. You make a positional error, you get poor contact, and all of a sudden, I could have seen him missing that ball to top right last year. Whereas this year, it was just walk around and casually, reset, knock it in, we're all good. Small sample size, but just looked positive, didn't it?
So 3 minutes and 6 seconds left. Clock stops, reminder, in the final 5 minutes of the match for the racking of the ball. So 3 minutes and 6 seconds remaining. 3-2 the lead for the Macs against Declan Brennan and Ronan McCarthy. Not been very many mistakes so far. Well, Ronan's been in the lab. Look at that for a break. I can't believe what I'm seeing.
I think Ronan McCarthy spent the last 6 months in the gym looking at that. Wow. He'd love to have had that break for his whole career. He'd have won many, many more titles.
Yeah, wouldn't he just? It's a fantastic break. Has he been a little unlucky with how this has landed?
Yeah, I think the yellow, he's on the yellow to top right, but I think the yellow by the cue there when he played that shot didn't really have a pocket, didn't really have a home, and I think that's the reason. Whereas, whilst the reds are slightly more awkward connections, not by much.
Oh, this red goes,
there is no
which
issue.
I wasn't sure of. So yeah, reds are okay.
As always, it's that transitional shot. It'll be interesting to me. I mean, the yellow above the 8 ball's awkward. The 8 ball's actually the most awkward ball on the table here. So he wants to land nicely on it. So if he's straight in on the red to bottom left, last ball, he drops in and he's perfect on the 8 ball. But getting the angle, it could get a little bit awkward. So straight in, and he's not straight in. So we are now in a slightly awkward situation.
Yeah, he wanted to be the other side of straight, if anything. He's a long way short.
Yeah, you can afford to be the same distance past the straight rather than short.
Jaws the pots. Well, well, well. The Macs are on the attack. Ronan McCarthy and Declan Brennan even up on the personal count in terms of mistakes. But 2 missed balls really can be all it takes in these short matches to run aground.
Yeah, I like this from Vivek, just getting up and getting involved and discussing the clock. Don't actually have to make the clearance here, just need to pot a couple of balls.
Yeah, the one thing that Vic didn't want to be doing tonight was running around and doing anything silly, and thankfully for him, he doesn't have to do much here. Just hold things together.
Yeah, it's almost impossible here not to. It'd be a bad miss not to run out, but you're only going to pot 2 more balls, really. 50 seconds left, maybe 3. I mean, it's job done here.
In fact, Vivek's a bit embarrassed, I think, that his dad's time wasted. He's like, come on, Dad, get him finished.
I wouldn't be too keen to rush. They only need 15 seconds to pot the last 3 balls, so don't do anything silly.
Yeah, as long as you're in the, as long as you got a shot on the 8 ball with not much time left, I think you're happy then. I think Vic's doing the right thing here. He's been steady, made sure of no mistakes. And now Vivek's telling him to take his time. Vic Makh then to seal the deal. And that is a perfect start for Vivek and Vic. The Makhs on the attack in the Pairs Cup. The favourites beaten first up. And well, this group has just been blown wide open by 2 players, not quite playing at max speed. 4-2, the first result. Second match coming up.